How many of you work from home on a regular basis? Raise your hands. And by that, I don't mean the kind of work from home where you're in the office all day and you don't finish and you go home and sign back on again, because we all do that, right? I'm talking about the kind where you work from home on a regular basis. So there's maybe a third of the people in the room say yes to that. How many of you work with people in other locations, whether it's across town or across the country? Okay, so most of you. Now, if I were to tell you that with the right skills, attitude, and equipment, you can run any project from anywhere, would that be something that interests you? I hope so, because that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about strategies of dealing with virtual teams. So we're going to talk about three things tonight: management, meetings, and mechanisms. So these are three strategies that we're going to talk about. So let's start first with the management component. Generally, when someone talks about project management, they start talking about all of the process-driven pieces. What phase are you in? What is the, whether you're using Scrum or Agile, and it's all very much focused on what to me is a small part of the puzzle to getting any project or product done, which is the process. To me, the larger component is the people, and that's where your management skills come in. And you'll find if you talk to me for any length of time, I'm very passionate about leadership. And I mean the kind of leadership where someone will say to you, it doesn't matter what you need me to do as long as I work for you. And I've had that said to me many times in my career, and it's an amazing feeling to be able to inspire that kind of loyalty in your team. And I want to teach you some of the things that I learned so that you can inspire that loyalty as well. The reality is most people don't work in that kind of a space. If you look at a study that was done maybe 2 years ago when they were looking at the unemployment statistics, what they found was that almost half of the people unemployed were unemployed on purpose. They weren't fired, they weren't laid off, their company didn't go out of business, they quit. And the number one reason why people quit is because of their boss, their immediate supervisor. Now, I get that as a project manager you don't have direct line responsibility for the people on your team, but I will tell you that at least for the length of your project, the leadership that you exhibit impacts their lives. And that's something that I take very seriously, and I would suggest that you do as well. All right. So what's the solution? The solution is simple. You treat people right, you find out what they need for them to get their jobs done, and then you get out of the way. All right. So let's start with results. Your focus is always to be on results. You have no control over where people are working, when they're working, who they're working with, right? What environment they're in. You have no control over that, nor should you care. What you care about is, can they get their work done, right? And so when your communications with your team should be all about, what is it that you need? How can I help you? Where are we getting to? What is it we're trying to get to? What is the next target? And what are the things that you need to get there? Now, you guys have all heard of the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, where he talks about getting all the right people on the bus, right? Well, here's my philosophy. You guys are project managers. You're not on the bus. Here's where you are. You're a couple of miles ahead of them, and you're clearing all those big boulders off the road, right? You're doing the escalations. You're getting the resources that they need. So by the time the team's ready to get there, you've already cleared the roadblocks, and so you're not on the bus. But what that does is everyone on your team now sees you as somebody that's there to help them. The project managers that drive me crazy are the ones that all they want to know is, what's the status? Where are you with this? What's the % complete on that? And they're doing what I call feeding the PMO machine, right? And I ran a PMO, okay, so I get you have to do a certain percentage of that, but that doesn't really matter that much. What matters is the results. Can you get the work done? Your project exists because your business needs something to happen. You need a product created, you need something developed, and that's what's important, and that's what you focus on. And when your project team sees you as someone who's helping them get their job done, when you come with your proverbial clipboard asking for your status, they're going to help you get your job done too, because you're part of the same team. Okay? The second thing is relationships. Relationships matter even more so in a virtual environment than ever before. If you're in an environment where your team is around you, like we're here today, you're going to get to know each other on a personal basis, just as a matter of course, right? You're going to talk to each other. You'll know what pictures they have hanging in their cubicle, right? You get to know people personally. When you're dealing with a virtual environment, you, as the project manager, have to make that happen. And it'll start with you. The first thing that I tell all of my PMs to do is figure out who the key people are on the team that you need working with you on a regular basis, and then pick up the phone and call them one by one and just get to know them. Find out about their families and their hobbies and whatever it is that drives them, right? Ask them about how long they've worked there and what they're doing, and just get to know them as human beings. And so you start with you, and then you move on to your team. Now, you know that dealing with people in different locations, that you're going to spend a lot of time on the phone, all right? You guys know this. You're on conference calls all the time. And there's a right way and a wrong way to introduce the human element to your conference calls. Now, have you guys been on a conference call where all of the beeps are coming in and there's silence and nobody's asking or speaking or doing anything, right? It's dead air. And then you've got the robot who's like, who dialed in please, who joined please, thank you, right? They're robots and there's no personality to it. Just introduce your own humanity. You know, hi, who joined? Hey, Karen, great, glad you're here. Hey, Tim, welcome back from vacation. You know, whatever it is that you know about these people, bring it into your conference calls and bring in that conversation just to make people feel like they're part of the team, right? You've got people in this situation where they're sitting in basically a cubicle graveyard, right? We were just talking about that in the back of the room. And reach out to them as human beings and make them feel like they're part of that team and give them that identity as part of the team. One of the things that I did, now my team was a team of project managers who ran projects, and so we didn't necessarily have project managers working on the same projects. So their daily interaction was almost nothing. And so one of the things that I did was we were fortunate enough to have an environment with a telepresence. You guys know what a telepresence is? So you're sitting in a room with kind of a semicircle table, and then there's a bank of video screens around you, and people from different locations dial in, and it's like you're sitting in the same room in a big circle seeing all these different locations. And so I would make my team come to a meeting like that at least once a quarter, and we weren't allowed to talk about work. Nothing about work. We didn't want to hear anything about what was happening in the office. So you could talk about all kinds of personal stuff. And that woman that worked in Tampa with me, that worked from home 100% of the time, I made her come in for this. And that's the only reason I ever made her come in. But I had an employee who talked about his wedding for years. It seemed like he was just planning this wedding forever. And I started teasing him, like, okay, dude, there really isn't going to be a wedding, right? This woman's like is a figment of your imagination. And it's like, when we have our next meeting, I want you to bring a photo, right? Bring a picture of her. So he did, sure enough. He comes in with this framed photograph of the two of them together. And of course, then we started telling him how we photoshopped it, and she still really didn't exist. But that's the kind of thing you do with your team, is get to know each other on a personal basis. And it's very easy to do. You just have to intentionally do it. And as project managers, I will challenge you to make sure that you do that. Okay, so we're moved ahead here to recognition. Recognition is my third component under the management. We know that one of the biggest killers of morale is when people feel underappreciated or unappreciated, right? We know that. And how hard is it to show some appreciation to someone? Now, I know we're not going to talk about budgets, we're not going to talk about financial rewards, we're talking about a simple thank you. We're talking about you're on a project team with a group of people and someone gets their piece done, just acknowledge it. How hard is that? You know, if Sally has to finish something before Tom can pick up his piece and she says, okay, I'm done, all right, Sally, you're done, great, you're ahead of schedule, this is great, Tom, it's up to you. How long does that take? Couple of seconds, but what does that do for Sally, right? It gave her a little hero status for just a little bit of time on your team. Billy Martin, I don't know if you guys know who Billy Martin is. He was a manager of the Yankees a very long time ago when I was a kid, and I was actually growing up in New York, so I cared about people like Billy Martin. And here's what he said: there's nothing greater in the world than when somebody on the team does something good and everybody gathers around to pat him on the back. And that's the kind of culture that you need to instill in your team, so that you're collaborating and working together where you're helping each other. When someone gets something done, you just acknowledge it. Right? So I'm going to ask you guys, think about in the last couple of days or maybe the last week, when you did something at work that you felt good about, that you accomplished something, and nobody said a word. And how did that make you feel? Right? Not so good. So my challenge to each of you is sometime in the next 24 hours, pay attention to the people on your team, find somebody who does something, and acknowledge it. That's all. Show some appreciation and watch the reaction.